Hello, all you scaredy cats and kittens, and welcome to the Two Scaredy Cats Podcast, where we talk about all things strange, unusual, and paranormal. We're your hostess with the mostest. I'm Stacy.
And I'm Kara.
So, Kara, me and you were on our family trip to the Dominican Republic last week.
Yep.
We had a really good time, I believe, or at least I know I
That was
did.
fun.
I don't know if you did or not. But it's like some crazy things happened while we were there, which were kind of interesting. We did not see the moon gazer while we were there, though, unfortunately.
Very sad.
And we did not see the baka. Yes, very sad.
We didn't crash in the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, no plane crash either, which was a good thing, I think. but we did. Kara saw oh my God, Kara befriended this wild dog that was on the beach. And she's petting it, and this thing is like a mongrel dog. This thing looks awful.
It is not mongrel. He looked normal.
He does not look normal. He was messed up.
He was a little skinny.
Did you see his face? It was not normal. But anyway.
Because he was malnourished.
Oh my God. So Kara's like petting this damn dog, and damn if that thing didn't follow us all the way up the beach back to our resort where we were staying at, and he wouldn't leave. And so she's like freaking out screaming at me about how does she get rid of the dog, and I'm like, well, stop petting it and then it'll leave you alone. So
he thought I had food.
Yeah, but finally another person had food and called him over, and he went to them, and we were able to escape. But
He wasn't.
He looked a little
anything.
rough. I mean, come on, let's be
food.
real. And you never know.
Yeah, let's be real. He was a nice little dog.
Anyway. Also, while we were there, we a hibachi restaurant on the property that we ate at one night. And now, I don't know about anybody else, but I have been to several hibachi restaurants, and they have never, ever done this. When we were there, they did their little show, which was awesome, the throwing the eggs around, their knife throwing skills and all that. And then we get to, like, the food prep part, and he's throwing, the normal stuff you have, chicken, steak, the rice, the vegetables on there. And the next thing you know, he's throwing the oil on and all the other seasonings. He grabs a bottle of sriracha, and I'm thinking, oh, this isn't going to end well. And he starts to dump it on everything on the grill. And I am freaking out because I do not do very well with spicy foods. I would love to eat spicy foods, but my body will not let me. And I knew it was going to be a rough go for me. And the amount of sriracha that this man was putting on there was insane. So my whole family, though, likes sriracha, apparently. So they're all there just shoveling it in. And I'm like, trying to eat around it the best I could and trying like little bits of it. But it was so spicy, I couldn't do it. So my husband's hurrying up and eating all of his off his plate while the kids are just, hanging, which was fine. But at that point, I couldn't take it anymore. I mean, my eyes were watering and my throat was on fire. And I was drinking dry white wine at the time, which was an acid, which was making it even worse. So we got up and we left because my mouth was I was just done. And it was just so weird that they put sriracha on the food. If they ever do put anything spicy, usually at any of the other restaurants we've ever been to, they always ask, do you want the hot sauce with your food? Not let's just dump it on everybody's and give it to everybody and say, hey, here you go. Have a good day.
They doused the steak with it.
They did. I mean, he was just kept dumping. It's like,
I took a bite of the steak and I was like, oh my Lord, this is hot.
It was very spicy, and for poor me that can't handle anything, I was just dying.
And they didn't warn you anywhere on the
menu
that
nowhere.
Was gonna be sriracha. Right. It must be like a Dominican Republic thing. That's
what we think. We think that maybe that's like a thing.
They add a little twist to their cultural stuff,
So,
like how how Americanized, bastardizes all their food.
I know, but still, I would have.
I guess they put spicy stuff in it.
Well, they need to tell people that because there really are some people that can't do that. That night was ruined because that's all I wanted to do was eat at this stupid restaurant too, and I was so excited for it. And then we get there and I get the show and I go to eat my food and I couldn't even finish it because it was so hot. So, but anyway, we did have a nice time besides all that. And
our server was cool. Except for the dumping sriracha part.
Yeah. But we learned there. I don't know if Kara picked up on this, but in the Dominican Republic, they go on their time. So there's no hurrying in the Dominican. Everything is very slow, and they're
Except that one time when they took your meal.
Yes,
they took your food, right? So, like, she was literally mid-bite, and they just took her food away from her.
I know.
They didn't even ask.
I was, like, in the middle of a really good steak, people, okay? And this is, like, the first day we're there, and I'm enjoying the steak, and I'm eating it. And he just lifts up my plate and takes it while I have, like, the fork in my hand.
Yeah, you had it in your...
And I'm like, what the heck?
That was crazy. I've never seen that before.
And then before that, we had some soup that we were eating. They had like a fish chowder on the menu that I was eating. And it was like in this bread bowl, and I was eating some of the bread and still eating the soup. And the server comes around and takes that away from me too while I'm still eating. I'm like, I cannot win for the life of me here. But other than that,
it's funny. And we saw the cats. The cats were at that place.
Yes, gosh forbid. Kara saw all these cute little kittens, these little orange calico kittens that were running around all over there. They were cute.
Living on the beach. They were beach cats, just like my beach dog.
They were so cute, but yeah, the servers didn't like us paying attention to them because
I know they were
giving you the stink eye. Yeah,
so
they were giving you the stink eye about the cats. I think there's a reason why they don't. But it was funny because Kara was like talking to the cats, like, you know, from far away. But this family, while Kara's like looking over at the cats, this family gets up and walks and takes all their scraps and throws them at the cats.
Yeah, and just threw them off. I was like, what the heck?
Rolling.
I was like, at least I'm not feeding them.
Right, yeah. I was like, why don't we go side-eye the people that are feeding the cats? But it was a really neat resort. It was brand new, so there was some kinks they still have to work out. But the grounds there were gorgeous. The pools were amazing. The beach was nice. There was some issues with like the sawgrass stuff that's been coming across the Caribbean. We towards the end of our trip, I don't know if you noticed, but it was getting to be a much bigger problem.
It sucked because you couldn't like go in the water without being touched by it.
Right, yeah. It was really gross. Well,
thankfully it wasn't there when I went on our excursion because we were far enough out.
You were far. See, that's just it. You had to be far enough out, and you would avoid it. Now, when me and Dad went on a walk, like all the way down by where the park that's like right next to where our resort was, there's like a lagoon, but we didn't go back into the woods to go see that. You didn't know that? Yeah, there was like a lagoon with like mangrove trees and all that back there that you could get to. Yeah, but
you told me that we weren't allowed over there.
Well, I know. Did you see how sketchy looking it was though, with all those
little
shanties?
Where the dog was.
Yeah, I know. Well, there was shanties there, and people.
The dog lived over there.
Yeah. So me and Dad were there, and we were walking along that beach there, and it was really like we tried to get in the water, and it was so gross and full of that stuff. And then Dad got stung by something when we were in the water, because like a couple hours later when we looked at his foot, it was all swollen, and he had like these like marks and like a pattern on his. It was weird. So we think he got maybe a jellyfish or something. So yeah, that made me even more leery of, you know, getting into the water, because you couldn't really see what you were, you know, walking around or near. But other than that, we had a great time. And then I don't know if you saw this story out of Florida this week, but there was an alligator that they have found in Florida that is supposedly the largest alligator ever seen. And he,
that's cool.
Yeah, he measures in at like 18 feet, okay?
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, this sucker's huge. But the funniest thing is they have nicknamed him, funny enough,
Croczilla.
Croczilla, that's what it was. Yes, Croczilla.
Yeah. I just made that up.
No, but that's really what it is. But anyway, oh my God, they were showing pictures of this thing's jaw. I've never seen an alligator with a jaw like as large, and his teeth were huge. His jaw was all janky. Anyway, if you search for Croczilla, you will find him. But it was really crazy to see this big croc. Anyway, he's been terrorizing a town in Florida, so they're trying to find him. But he's pretty large.
He's gonna escape into the sewers.
Yeah, right. And then, you know, next thing you know, we're gonna have like baby.
There's a movie called Croczilla.
Is there really? That's funny.
Yeah, I googled it.
But yeah, he's a pretty big alligator, and his nose looks crazy the way it is.
He's big.
But yeah, he is big. That's all I have for today. Do you have anything else to add, Kara?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Oh, how was your Twitch? Your streaming? You made okay. Tell people what's going on. You made yourself.
I made myself a VTuber. If you know what that is.
Okay. And and she had a live stream for it. Was it last night or the night
Monday
before?
Night. Yeah.
Monday night. Okay. And how did that go?
It went well.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Better than I was expecting. So that's always good.
Yeah. Are you gonna tell everybody what the name of your character is so they can find you, or? Come on.
Yeah, my VTuber name. Her name is Trashy Rainbow.
Alright, so you guys need to check out Trashy Rainbow and see what Kara's designed for herself as a VTuber.
Yeah, I was streaming photo editing. But we're actually doing a stream, which I guess it'll be after this even comes out. But we're doing a stream tomorrow. For the national holidays tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We'll leave it at that. All right.
We'll just say that. We won't say what day we're streaming or recording this on.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
She brought me my stuff yesterday.
Did she? That's good.
Right. She got me.
Yeah, okay. Enough.
A legal place.
Anyway.
Yeah, we're playing Goat Simulator.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Or I guess it doesn't matter, but
cool.
Yeah, I guess you watch the VOD.
I was gonna say I might have to come figure this out. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to come watch it tomorrow. I might
have to check this all out.
Yeah, I don't know how functioning I'll be, but
all right. I guess since Kara went first last week, it's my turn to go first this week. So this week, today's story basically reminds me of the old saying that truth is stranger than fiction. I'm going to be talking about the true story behind the movie The Orphan. Now, The Orphan is actually based off a case called the Kurim Cannibalism case. So this real-life case took place or got discovered, if you want to call it that, in May of 2007. The psychological brutality and abuse happening to two small boys by the name of Jacob and Andre appeared on a neighbor's baby monitor. The neighbor was hooking up a baby monitor. His wife was about ready to have a baby within the next day. And he was hooking up the baby monitor to make sure everything was working. And when he was hooking it up, at first he didn't get any image. And he's all upset with himself because he thought he had wired it wrong. But after he tried it again, all of a sudden he got an image of this little boy playing with a roll of tape. And he was naked. And he looked like he was in a cage. And at first he kind of brushed it off and thought, nah, it's just, something I'm picking up. It can't be real. So a little while later, he tried it again. And he got another image of the little boy again, naked in a cage. And he started to wonder if this was really a legit thing. And nobody, because at first he thought his friends were messing with him.
Weird.
Because they knew that he was setting this thing up today. So he kept it on and was watching it off and on for a while. And as he was watching it started getting much worse, the things that were happening to the little boy. He saw a hand try to force feed the little boy food, and it was shoving so much food down this poor little boy's throat that the little boy started choking on the food. And he could see a hand of a person doing it to him. So he got really concerned at this point about, this just didn't look right. So he decided to go to the local authorities. So he called up the police and told them what was going on. Now, at first, the police also thought he was just joking and making this up. But he was like, no, it's on my baby monitor. Please come to my house and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So the police show up over at his house. They're looking at the baby monitor and they realize that, whoa, this is something real and they needed to look into it immediately. So they used a cup because they turned the noise on the video way up to see if they could hear any sounds in the background to help them figure out. They knew it was a neighbor. They weren't sure which one, to figure out which neighbor it might be. And it turns out there was a radio playing in the background. And when they turned the noise up and they could hear the radio, they took a cup to the wall and they were going around the walls in the man's house, trying to figure out which side of the house the music was coming from. So they figured it out. So they end up heading next door to a pair of sisters by the name of Clara and Catherine. And when they knocked on the door, the two sisters answered it and denied that anything was wrong and that there was no children present in the home. Well, the police didn't believe them, and they pushed past both the ladies. And they went down into the basement, and that is where they found the two little boys in dog cages. And we all know dog cages are not that big, yes.
Whoa.
And this was like a 10-year-old boy and a, let's see, the other boy would have been 8 or 7, about 7, I think, at the time. And they were trapped in these cages in the basement. They were naked, they were very malnourished, and they were riddled with burns all over their skin, and they had severe injuries to themselves. In case anybody doesn't know, the movie The Orphan is a story of a little girl by the name of Esther, who is adopted by a family and turns out to be a total psychopath and a serial killer. But she was also I think, was she like, what, in her late 20s, Kara, the girl in the movie? And not a child, not the 12-year-old child she was posing as. Now, the real story that I'm going to go tell you even more about here in a second is more disturbing than the movie and was inspired by a woman by the name of Barbora Skrlova. Now, Barbara was a woman who was posing as a child in Norway. And she did this several times. The first time that this happened, she was probably in her early 20s. And she tried to get adopted by this family. And at first they were really interested in her. But the mom kept getting this feeling like something wasn't right. This little girl doesn't seem to be as little as she's claiming to be. So the mom at the last minute decided that she did not want to adopt Barbara, and she ended up going back into children's home, or whatever you want to call it. Then Skrlova, or Barbara, was in the Czech Republic where this all happened, and she started to befriend or came to live with the two sisters, Clara and Katrina Morova. Now, and Clara's 2 children. Clara had 2 children also, by the way, when she came to get to know Barbara. Now, Barbara introduced to Clara through another person that was like a nun, and said that she needed to be adopted out. And she was not using her real name, Barbara. She was actually using the name of Anonka, I believe it was. And by using this name, get them to believe that she was actually a 13-year-old girl instead of a grown adult, which she was 33 years old at the time that this all went down, which is crazy. Obviously, she met with Clara and her sister Catherine, and Clara decides that they're going to adopt this girl. So they adopt the girl and they bring her into their home. And when they start bringing her into the home, she starts to claim... So Clara was schizophrenic, and each day she kept getting crazier and crazier, so much so that the reason why she was living with her sister was because her husband or boyfriend at the time separated from her and left her with the kids. Now, because of this, she became very depressed, and she started to develop a very aggressive personality and would leave the boys at home alone and in very dangerous situations. Now, during this time, the boys were starting to act out a little bit, as I guess children would when they are presented with these kinds of situations. And the school was calling and saying, now this was all of what Clara said, so you gotta kind of, she was kind of crazy, so you kind of, you know what I mean? But anyway, she was saying that one of the boys was caught stealing a phone from another student at school, that one of the boys was being very disrespectful and stuff to the teachers. She felt like she was starting to lose her boys, and they were starting to, she needed to rein them in a little bit, I guess is what you would say. So then they, like I said, they met Barbara, right? So before they even met Barbara, though, she had been hospitalized, especially since she was little, in a psychiatric ward for years before she even met Clara. She was, while she was in the psychiatric ward, and before she met Clara and them, like I told you, she had tried to present herself as an orphan and tried to get adopted by a family. So since that one didn't work, she thought she would try it again. So this time she visited with Clara, and she told her that her name was Anonka, and that she was an orphan. So Clara decides that she wants to adopt her. So she does. Well, Anaka, or Barbara as we're going to call her, convinced Clara that her kids did not love or accept Barbara as their sister, and that they were being mean to her. And she would say that they were doing inappropriate things to her and stuff. And Clara and Katrina were so obsessed with Barbara that they didn't believe the boys, and they believed everything that Barbara was feeding them. So she convinced these two that they needed to give severe punishment to the boys for their misbehaviors. At this time, Clara decides that she's going to cut all ties with her family, her mom, her dad. They had another younger sister, and her ex-husband. And the only person that she lets the boys hang around with is Catherine, obviously, who lives with her. So she tells all of her family that the reason why she's doing this is because she is going to follow the orders of a doctor who apparently has helped many other children like hers, and that she is going to reprogram her kids. Now, this seems a little strange to me because, ever since she was little, she'd been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and her mom and dad didn't seem alarmed at all that she was cutting off all ties with her family and going to take the boys away from them. It's really bizarre. So she has this doctor that texts her, okay, which I think is hysterical, and gives her advice on things she should do to the boys to get them in line, okay? And one of the first things that this doctor tells her is that she needs to lock her children up in cages and not to have any clothes for them and not to give them any food. So Clara thinks this guy is a legit doctor. This person is a legit doctor. So she does what they say. They go and they find a couple of dog cages. They borrow them from some friends in that. And they set them up in the basement of the house, and they move the kids into the dog cages. The doctor also insisted to Clara that she beat the boys with different objects around the house. So she would go and she would grab like wooden spoons. She had a metal belt that she would beat the boys with. And she had other stuff that she would just, wail on these children. They would also put plastic bags around the over the boys' heads and suffocate them to the point of where they couldn't breathe anymore. They would urinate in the water and they would make them drink it.
Ew.
They would this is the worst part right here. I mean, the urinating in the water is pretty bad, but this one is the most disturbing of all. They would force the boys to use forks. They would throw these nasty, dirty forks into the cage with them. And they would force the boys to use the fork to dig the flesh off of each other's skin.
Ew.
Yeah. And then once they did pick it off each other, they would tell them that they needed to eat it. But the boys refused to do this, so they wouldn't eat the chunks of meat that they had taken off of each other. So Barbara and Clara and Catherine decided that they were going, or Katrina, decided that they were going to then smoke cigarettes and burn their wounds where they had just ripped the flesh off their body.
How do these people even get children?
I know. I don't understand either. So, and Barbara would eat the chunks of skin that the boys pulled off that they refused to eat. Yes, she was a messed up person. So, at this time, hold on a minute, okay, so at this time then, is when, things have gone really bad, that the boys are in this awful situation, and that is when this next door neighbor discovered them on the TV, and that is when they got rescued. But when they got rescued, things were still pretty crazy. When the police came to the house and they found the boys in the cages, they also found our friend Barbara, claiming that she was Anika, the 12-year-old girl, and she was crying on the floor in front of the cages when they found the boys. So they ended up taking the boys and her all to an orphanage or a children's home. So while they're there at the children's home, Anika ends up staying there for one night and she escapes. They don't know where she went.
Oh, great.
They have no idea where she was, but she totally escaped and is on the loose. Now, the boys that have been put in there while the trial is starting to go on, they have several people, psychiatrists that are working with them. When I actually read all the case files on this, and when I was reading through the case files, the people that were helping them after they had been discovered actually testified on the stand about how they were mentally after all this happened. And it was so sad the things that they said. They said that both of the boys were not mentally at the right age. They could not tell you, like, the names of certain food items when they would present them to them. Like, they didn't know what a hot dog is. They didn't know what a bun was. They didn't know how you used a bun. They couldn't take care of themselves hygiene-wise. Like, they didn't know how to put on clothes at all. Show them how to do it, and even then they didn't understand. Like, they would put their t-shirt on backwards, and she said it was so terrible. She also said that the kids were very clingy to the people that were taking care of them. Like, they wanted to be cuddled, and it was very awkward sometimes, and they said it was not, like, normal, like, stuff that they had seen before. She said that, and it took 6 months just to get the boys to relearn how to do clothes and what some food items were. Now, the little boy named Andre, he was so messed up by the experience that whenever they tried to get him to eat anything, he would start crying and scream and refuse to eat. Wow. And then he would roll around on the floor. Yeah. And they said that there were times when both boys would act like dogs. Like, they would just start crawling on the floor and barking and acting like dogs. It was so messed up. So they pretty much messed up these children. Also, with the trial, when it started going on and all these things came to light, the mom, Clara, was really, like, she really thought everything that she did, she was, like, helping her children out. I mean, she was that deranged. So it got to a point, though, where she started to realize that what she had done was wrong, like, way wrong. And I think she started to freak out a little bit, and she was, like, crying and all that. But she never knew who the doctor was, which was really bizarre. She would never come forward and say who the doctor was. Well, they put Katrina. She admitted that it was actually her and Barbara that were the doctor and were telling her to do all these, like, disgusting and depraved things to her children. And I'm like, that is so, because Catherine's like their aunt. I mean, it's just so messed up. So they finally found our friend Barbara, okay? So they pull her into custody and all that, and they get her on trial, and she admits that she was the doctor, that she liked to watch Clara and Katrina do all these things to the children, you know, like, she got off on that kind of stuff. They were sending her to a psychiatric facility to have her evaluated, because she's obviously nuts.
Yeah.
Well, apparently on the way to the facility, she escapes again. I mean, this woman is, like, insane. And it turns out she escaped. They found her, like, 2 years later. She had decided that she was going to become a little boy this time, okay? She got adopted by a family. Her name was Adam. She was living in Norway, and she'd been there for 2 years under this new identity as Adam when they found her and ended up bringing her back in. So all these people, you know, end up in jail. None of them serve a very long sentence, if you ask me. The two sisters, like the mom that was, you know, mostly behind most of it, and the sister, they only got 6 years in prison. It was supposed to be a 12-year term. Now, Barbara, the really nutty fruitcake one that, you know, was being all these children and all that, and was really like a 33-year-old woman, she only got like 5 years in prison, and then she was let out. But she was let out, I want to say, 2020, I believe. Well, anyway, she's nobody knows where she is. She's disappeared again, so she's probably...
Oh, great.
Yeah, back up on her antics again. So, by the way, the reason why she was able to get away with dressing up like a child was because she had a disorder called hypopituitarism. And this is a disorder that causes you to stop growing, like your pituitary gland stops. And that's why she looked so young and could get away with being these children.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out, I was like, how the heck was she doing that?
Right? I know, and I have pictures, and you're gonna, like, it's insane how she truly does look like she's like a 13 or 14-year-old kid, even though she's like 33. Oh. Now, the one with her, with the boy, she gained a lot of weight from the time she was, like, pretending like she was a girl to the time she got to be the boy one. And on the boy one, she just does not look like, I'm sorry, but I would be like that. You do not look like a boy, and you look like you're much older than what you're saying you are. But Anyway, so that's the story of the real life true story about the Orphan, and the story of Barbora Skrlova and how she was posing as children and doing crazy things.
Yeah, that was pretty wild.
So, I know, I told you it was stranger than the movie, like, and a lot more intense, I think. I mean, yeah, the little girl killing people was probably not cool, but this lady is, like, just tutti frutti. Yeah. So, what do you got for us this week?
I have the Kahmar Deban Deaths.
Okay, never heard of this.
Which, that's, it's a mountain range in Russia.
Okay, no wonder why I've never heard of it.
So, it's actually kind of similar to, the Dyatlov Pass thing. Like, where basically people go missing, essentially. But so in August of 1993, which is just kind of recent, considering some stuff we talk about, 6 out of 7 group members would mysteriously die on our hike.
Huh.
Like, really crazy die. So, our story begins, 41-year-old Ludmila Krovina.
That's all right. I know.
I'm trying my best to say these words. These names are all, like, Russian names. So
we apologize, because our Russian's not very good, and I had Russian names, and I probably butchered them, too.
Yeah. So she was not only an experienced hiker, she was also a survivalist. She was known amongst her peers and students for being one of the best. She was well known for really pushing her students and teaching them crucial hiking skills that you need. And then the summer of 1993, she had planned a hike in the Kahmar Deban mountain range. And this was an area that she knew very well, and this was, like, a very popular tourist spot. So it's not like it was, like off on their own or whatever. So the students who were accompanying her had been training with her for a while, and then she knew them all pretty well, and like how effective, like, what their strengths and weaknesses are. The ages of the kids that were with her, they were, like, the oldest was 23 and the youngest was 15, so it was a pretty, like, large gap in ages. Yeah. So the students were Alexander Kryson, Tatiana Filipenko, Denis Shvachkin, Valentina Utochenko, Victoria Zelisova, and Timur Babanov. Like I said, these names are a little wild for us, I guess. So they begin their hike on August 2nd of 1993. They begin going up to the mountain range, and at this time there were actually 3 other similar groups of hikers in the area. So it's not like they were out there by themselves. One of the groups was actually led by Ludmila Krovina's daughter, Natalia. And the 2 groups had planned to cross paths a few times. Like, the way they planned their trips was so that there would be points where they would meet up and, like, check on each other and stuff. Yeah. So everything had been going pretty well the first 2 days. However, on August 4th, they were hit by an unexpected rainstorm, which that slowed them down considerably because it added extra weight. It's like when your stuff is wet.
Makes sense.
It makes it harder, so they're a little bit more exhausted. And it slowed them down considerably because, like I said, their stuff was all soaked. And they had to stop a little early, and they were unable to start a fire that night. But they were able to start a new fire the next morning. This was the day that they had planned to meet up with Natalia's group. So later that day, Natalia and her group make it to the meetup point, but the mother's group had not shown up. They, like I said before, that she was experienced, so they really didn't think anything of it. Like, maybe they knew that the rain, so that they thought that slowed them down a bit. So she wasn't really super worried, and her group continued on. Jump to August 9th. Some kayakers had noticed something unusual in the tree line while they were paddling down a river, and this is at the base of the mountain. So they had spotted a young girl in the tree line alone, waving and screaming for help.
That's odd.
So, yeah, it's a little odd. So there are some, like, reports of this saying that she was covered in blood. Some don't. Who knows? When she was approached, she became hysterical and started screaming and, like, crying. She was trying to tell the kayakers what happened. She was eventually identified as Valentina Utochenko, one of the people from the group, and she explained that while she was hiking with the 6 others, they all ended up dying. And they took her to the police. They were a little alarmed by her story, and she didn't exactly tell what happened. And she would actually not come forward with her story until, like, years later. They did not, which this is where it gets a little weird. They did not start beginning to search for the bodies until 2 weeks after they found the girl.
2 weeks? That's a long time. Things can change.
That's weird, because she went to, like, the police, and she filed a police report and everything. But they didn't even start looking for 2 whole weeks, which is kind of weird. So on August 26th, the bodies were found. The bodies were discovered in an open clearing, and they were only a few feet apart from each other. The bodies were initially all diagnosed death of hypothermia, except Ludmila's. She apparently died of cardiac arrest, to the reports.
So she was scared to death, basically?
We don't know. Well, we'll eventually hear the story. But they all had signs of bruised lungs and protein deficiency due to malnutrition. Which is weird. And then the deaths were all ruled an accident.
Okay.
And so, in 2017, she finally came forward to a reporter about what she witnessed and, like, what actually happened, or her side of the story. So everything was going okay until after they ate breakfast and started heading towards the rendezvous point that we talked about earlier. Alexander, who was at the back of the group, just started to scream.
That's weird.
And then everyone turned around to see what was wrong, and they discovered that his eyes and his ears were bleeding, and he was frothing from the mouth. Yeah.
That's kind of
wild.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, so he fell to the ground convulsing, and then he went limp. Ludmila dropped down to try to, like, tend to him and told the others to keep going, because they're about to meet up with the group, so, like, they're probably going to need some help. So she's like, okay, guys, keep going. I'm going to try and deal with this. The others didn't get very far ahead before Ludmila started to cry out and suddenly had very similar symptoms to the other, where her eyes were bleeding and blood coming out of her mouth and crazy stuff. She'd end up collapsing on top of the other one person. And then Tatiana, she was the first one to make it back up to their group. Or back up to the two. She started to try and tend to them, and then she ended up having the same. She started grabbing her throat, and this is really disturbing. She crawled over to a rock and started bashing her head against the rock. I told you, this is, like, horrific what happens. Well, she bashes her head until she can no longer move. And then Victoria and Timur, they both took off running, but eventually they collapse and die like the others. I said, this is very wild. Dennis hides behind a rock. Valentina was unable to move after watching, because she's, like, horrified, because this is horrific. But eventually, her and Dennis, who was hiding, because everyone else is, like, gone except those two. Dennis is like, hey, we gotta start moving away from whatever's going on. So then those two start moving, and then Dennis collapses and starts having the similar symptoms. Valentina ended up running away from the others in horror. So first, she spent the night out there because she was so freaked out. She didn't want to go back. But then when she woke up in the morning, she was like, I don't have enough supplies to survive. So she knew she had to go back and basically supplies off of
the deceased.
I should say.
Okay.
So she went back, and they hadn't moved. They were all still in the same spots. And then she gathered some material and went, and she started following the power lines, actually, to make it back down to civilization. And that's when she found the kayakers. So that's a pretty insane story.
Yeah.
And definitely doesn't sound like the hypothermia.
No. Was there did they ever find out, was there something in the air that caused them all to convert?
It was all ruled an accident. So she came forward in 2017.
Right,
that is, like, so
years,
late. That's like 20,
yeah.
almost over 20 years after. So the case is probably well closed.
Right. And they can't dig up the bodies or anything. I mean, I guess they could, but...
they'd already been decomposing for 2 weeks by the time they found them. So there's probably not a lot of left, or what was going on. So there, some of the theories is food poisoning. So that's a weird theory. Because, like, you know, they were foraging
maybe
for
they
stuff
found, like,
too,
poison berries or
but,
something,
I mean, like,
and that's what happened.
But the way that... But why did the one girl not...
Maybe she didn't eat them.
What was going on with the rest of them?
You never know. You know what I mean?
We don't know.
Right, exactly. We don't know.
Another of the theories is altitude sickness.
I've never heard of anybody...
heart and breathing problems.
But not your eyes bleeding and your...
I know, that's why I said. This is just the theories part. Okay, this is like what people think happened. And they weren't even that high up on the mountain range where they were. And they were in like an open clearing. I think it said they were like 2,000 above sea level, which is not high enough for this to happen. I think it's like 5,000.
Yeah, for the air thing.
And they were... This is when they were coming back down or something. I don't... But I know that they were like around 2,000-ish. So the most likely and plausible theory, which is still very strange, is nerve gas, because that's
what I said. Was there some kind of gas in the area that they got exposed to?
Yeah, nerve gas can literally do that. Symptoms of the bleeding from the eyes and other areas, and it can cause like foaming at the mouth and the convulsing. So weapons testing for Russia was actually conducted in the Siberian mountains, which they were. So it could have been like some sort of... But that's weird, especially if it's a tourist area.
But, okay.
And then Yeti is also a theory. Cause it's always got to add something
the Yeti,
crazy.
But the Yeti doesn't make your eyes bleed.
Yeti is up there in the mountains.
Eyes bleed.
I mean, it really just depends. Like, do you think that the story she's told... She was also like... I believe she was 16 or 17. She was one of the younger ones in that group. But she wasn't the youngest, but she was one of the younger ones.
I don't know. I believe the gas theory or the poisoning theory, especially if they ate, like, there's some berries that will make your mouth, your, like, nightshade and stuff like that, so.
Yeah. I don't know, but it was just definitely bizarre.
Very bizarre.
I thought it was interesting. Oh, and there was a nerve gas place that was doing testing up until 1993.
Really?
Which just happened. So I wonder if they had to, like, be like, we can't test anymore.
People, yeah.
And I wonder if it was like government was like, it's just weird that they also didn't start looking at them.
That's the weird part. No, that's the weird part. But
I feel like there's something they knew was going on and they wanted it to...
They didn't want to kill anybody else, sending them up there.
Yeah. But there was other groups up on the mountain at the same time.
Yeah, it makes you wonder that if the government was involved in some of it, because we're talking about Russia for...
I know, it's also Russia, so it's why red flag number one. And then it's very similar to the Dyatlov Pass, except this one has a survivor. The Dyatlov Pass
but people weren't bleeding
survivors.
out of their eyes, and it looked like somebody had mauled them, or something along those.
Yeah, that other one was crazy because like they were missing their tongue and stuff. This one was just weird.
Yeah, it is weird.
I definitely thought it was interesting when I saw something about it. I was like, "Oh, we need to."
Yeah, I guess we'll never know.
Podcast. Yeah, I'd never heard of this one before, so
yeah, it's definitely a new one to me
definitely
too.
Interesting. Definitely like a murder or a mystery kind of thing.
Yeah,
and we'll never probably know, unfortunately, because that girl didn't come forward for so long. Which I don't really blame her. That's like traumatic.
Yeah, I'm sure that was very traumatic for her.
Well, do you have anything else today?
No, I think that's it. Just be on the lookout for little orphan girls claiming or women or Yetis.
Well, if you enjoyed our podcast today, follow us on Instagram at Two Scaredy Cats Podcast, and please be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It really helps the show get discovered. Tune in 2 weeks for a new episode, and to all our scaredy cats and kittens out there, curiosity didn't kill these two scaredy cats.